Okay, in that case, I'll call the Cunningham Town Board meeting of June 4, 2012 to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Bowersox Johnson?
Here.
Mr. Jacobson?
Here.
Mr. Lewis?
Here.
Miss Marlin?
Here.
Mr. Roberts?
Here.
Mr. Smythe?
Here.
Miss Stevenson?
Present.
Mayor Pressing?
Next up is approval of the minutes of the meeting of May 7th. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Dennis, second by Robert, or it's moved by Brandon, second by Robert. Got to keep these things straight here. Any discussion of the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. Committee to verify the bills, town fund in the amount of $78,691.15 and a general assistance fund of $43,935.98. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the town fund and the general assistance fund as mentioned.
Second.
It's been moved by Dennis, second by Diane. Discussion. Anyone? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. The bills are verified. Reports of officers. Carol.
Just have a few things. I did not bring a budget report tonight because we will need a special meeting on June 18th to adopt the final amended budget for the current fiscal year. And so you'll be getting probably more than you want, just end of the year wrap up plus the amended figures for the budget, and then we'll need a public hearing on that as well. I did want to mention about the city website and the township's presence on there. The amended tentative budget for the current fiscal year and the tentative budget for fiscal year 13 are now on the city website under the township financial documents under boards and commissions, and we'll be looking at other areas to get them edited and just a better explanation of the township services and work with the city to get that on the website.
Are there questions of Carol at this time on that? I have one quick one. Anyway, okay. Carol, on that, as you work with staff and Bill Visionet, for example, just trying to think about, right now the page for the town board is in with the boards and commissions.
Correct.
And I don't know, maybe it should have its own little section, a little bit separated from those. So that's the kind of, I think, ideas that I was looking for on this.
And I think as a board, what you would like to see, we're not a department of the city, so I want to make it clear that that's not what's up there, and it probably is easier for you to relay to the city staff instead of me, since they're not my staff, what we want on there, but I certainly think we could talk to Bill and other people about
I'd hate to have to put it...
and making it clear at the same time that we're not a department of the city.
Right, yeah, and so it'd be sort of like hosting a sub-site or something, is what I look at there. I don't really see the need to, I hope that we don't have to recreate the wheel and
Right.
have a whole new site. I think that's just more work than needs to be done. But at the same time, people need to understand what the township office does
Right.
and what can be put out there. And the same goes for the assessor's office there too. What information belongs there. It's the township and has some kind of presence that people can find.
Mm-hmm.
So if you guys could bounce that around and
Sure.
hopefully bring back some ideas in early July.
Sure.
Any other questions for Carol on that? Okay, thank you. Petitions and communications. Is there anyone here to address the town board? Carol, are you going to address the town board or? Oh, okay. And you know the routine. So if you state your name and address, please, for the record.
Carol McCusick, 403 West University. I think there could be confusion or a continuing confusion that, which actually I feel existed at the annual town meeting, about whether there's a deficiency as far as the picture of the Cunningham Township Board, or whether there's a deficiency about the annual town meeting as its own public body. And it needs to have its archived minutes together with its agendas and like a link to the code that governs that meeting, the annual town meeting, on a page, you know. It seem like you have a full-time clerical person for it, very much so in the case of that institution because of Phyllis. Clark, the city clerk. So that would be one thing I was going to talk about. The minutes for this town board meeting weren't in the binder at the back. They have of May 7th, the meeting that you just approved for the public. About townships, you know, I was talking at the last city council meeting to encourage people to remember that there's a Cunningham Township Board meeting, because the annual town meeting, how things go for them, they have to, if things aren't working just right, we think we have to, you know, the public has to come to the town board about it. But also, another thing that might help electors in Cunningham Township, which is the same as Urbana, to know their powers, is this website. And I believe that, okay, here it is, www.toi.org. And it's run by a law firm, and it sounds like they work in the General Assembly on the laws for townships in Illinois. In my mind, the questions that were left by the annual town meeting, as they were expressed by Charlie Smythe, who was moderating, not necessarily by the whole group, but he did tell us that, you know, that the town board would have to work on their website. And he also said that they would have to get a legal opinion of an attorney about the question of the amended form of the second petitioned question that was voted on, just so we would know how the group felt in case one or the other would fly. Well, that would be a trailing question from the annual town meeting that the electors would need. I mean, I really don't know how the county clerk's office or what the dates are for when they put the question on the ballot, but they probably have to hear from the attorney what he's decided was the wording that we approved at that meeting.
You have 1 minute, Ms. McCusick.
Thank you. But this should have been discussed, I feel as though, what with the way April 10th ended, that would have been discussed by May 7th by this body, actually. I don't feel that that did happen. One interesting thing is, I think the electors probably, it isn't clear how special meetings ever come about out of they talk about the clerk is going to put up a notice for either the annual town meeting or a special annual town meeting, but it isn't clear how the special ones come about. Let's say you follow Robert's Rules of Order and there are those items on the agenda. Where's the agenda from? Something like the resolutions for selling stuff that you had to approve. Would I be able to ask for a little more time?
We give her 3 more minutes.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, you've got 3 more minutes, Carol.
Well, one of them was for the sale of property. Is that how much you always, under our public comment law, you always extend it 3 minutes?
It's whatever the person who makes the motion decides to ask for.
Did you ask for 3 minutes?
Yes, I did.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. Okay, if Robert's rules say every person who speaks can speak for 10, every item can be spoken to by every member of the body for 10 minutes, twice. Then, you looked at the items on that agenda that we had on April 10th. You could have hit the end of the evening with that many electors in present. And so would that body have had the right to set up its own meeting? Is that what special meetings are? For example, because otherwise, one of the things I wrote to Phyllis and asked her, well, there's these lingering issues from this meeting. How are we going to have a special meeting? And she says, well, the electors who were there at the meeting, they set their next meeting, and it was next year. So that doesn't help us during this election season, if we want to work with those petition questions and advocate to the public, don't you want to vote this way, or don't you want to express your view in November on these issues? For ballot questions, you have to have explicit words. I think that's all I want to say.
Okay, Carol, I have a quick comment here. I agree with you on beefing up the web stuff, and I'm following up on it. And we're moving along very slowly on it, but we are moving to get some kind of presence for the town board and its functions on the website. That's something I'm committed to getting done, to seeing happen. So hopefully we'll address that over the next couple months. But because we don't want to spend a lot of money on it, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. So we need to work within the existing city structure if we can. So it's going to take a little time to do that. As to you're right, we need to follow up on the second item that was put out there. I think, though, we may have figured it out at the end that there was the proper version submitted, and it's the right version to begin with. So it may have been figured out, and I'll meet with the clerk and figure out if we do have the right version or whether we do need to get Fred's opinion on what to do next. So that's a good item to bring up, and I'll try to remind me to get that done before July's meeting. And then the last item, I think if the town board is to have a special meeting, is it something done by petition?
It's all in the Township Code.
Okay.
They address the annual meeting, they address special meetings, they address Township Board meetings. And I think you have to distinguish between a special meeting for the electors versus a special meeting for the town board. And I think the town board may be able to call a special meeting of the board or possibly the electors, but it's all very specific, I think, in the Township Code, which is chapter 60 or 35.
I know the Township Code governs the form of the meeting of the electors, right, and the order of the agendas and all that, right?
It describes everything.
Yeah, so you have to follow that order.
Yes.
That's correct.
Yes.
And in terms of Robert's Rules of Order only applies in terms of the stuff that isn't covered in those in the state statute?
I have no idea about that. I mean,
Okay.
I think again, the code talks about who puts what on the agenda, how that happens. I don't know that there's anything about Robert's Rules of Order being followed, unless maybe that's adopted by the board itself. Would you have any idea? Yeah, I mean, the board can adopt following that if, if it's not clear enough in the statutes, but anything you adopt would have to be in compliance with the township code. But I don't recall that we've ever, at least in my time here, formally said we're going to follow Robert's Rules of Orders. Maybe it's understood, but I don't recall that we have.
Eric?
So I've just done a keyword search through Robert's Rules of Order, and the only mention of time limits for speaking says, keep to the time limit for speaking that's been established. It doesn't say anything about 10 minutes.
Okay. And I know what state law does say for open meetings is that public input can be limited to 2 hours at any meeting. And so that is a upper limit that's set by state statute that boards and commissions can use. They, of course, can expand that if they want, but they can set a 2-hour limit and time limits of appropriate time limits for speakers in between. So you had another question, Carol?
To just go back on to the first thing you said before I talk about the public comment was you were saying that we're going to get on to the township board, so that I gather you're saying that the annual town meeting will be some kind of a would that not be the appropriate? Wouldn't there be decision making and that's appropriate for the electors as a whole? That would be my question about. One thing that occurs to me to remind you is that with that meeting happening once every year, you don't get the approved minutes for a really long time, another year, more than that. Usually it could be the second subsequent meeting. So if you need to find out what happened, you have to have that link it's not required that there be video, but we're very reliant on there being audiovisual and being able to find it so we know how to review what happened in that meeting. And on the other, that's as far as the website work and having like a clear place where what Carol's talking about, the township code, which it seems like that is very primary about our powers and how we handle that meeting. So it would be really good if that was. Yeah,
Carol, the town board is that annual town meeting is a very special thing within the township, and so I think that the best we can do is try to develop our website, like I said, and try to get materials in there and we'll work through it between now and next year. But it is a very specific meeting for a very specific set of things that are supposed to be done. It doesn't cover the regular town board meeting, and given that the amount of stuff that we still have to get to tonight, I'd like to just leave this discussion for another time when we're not quite so busy. But we do have time between now and next year to get things figured out.
People petitioned.
Yeah, I'd like to wrap this up. So wrap it up in 30 seconds, please.
Well, people petition for things on the ballot, and they want to review the video for it and have a place to go for our annual town meetings, I think, right away. So they know what they're doing for November. And also, a public comment shouldn't be used by electors on the electors' questions, because the question isn't stated before the public commenters, and it's like you're talking about things and you don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you
Next-
very much.
Next up is unfinished business. I don't think we have any. Under new business, next item is resolution number T 2012-06-001R, resolution ascertaining prevailing rate of wages for 2012. You have a document in front of you.
Move approval?
Second.
Who moved approval? Sorry. Diane. And seconded by, I heard a chorus, Dennis. Brandon? Okay.
All three of them did.
Oh, I heard a chorus. Okay. Any discussion here? Anything needs to be said, Carol? It's
No,
pretty-
just, we have to do this every year.
the standard boilerplate. Seeing no further comments here, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next up is discussion of the tax exemption litigation. You have a memo from our attorney, Mr. Grosser. Mr. Grosser, do you care to comment?
As I expect you're all aware, Carl Foundation filed suit 4.5 years ago against the Illinois Department of Revenue and its director, county officers, and the township assessor. This is prompted by the Illinois Department of Revenue determining that Carl was not entitled to tax exemptions on 4 of its main parcels. My status report and my comments are not directed at the Carl litigation, though if you want to discuss that sometime when you want to set aside plenty of time, we can do that. What I wanted to do by this is bring to your attention the fact that for reasons that are not even remotely clear to me, the Urbana School District decided to file suit in the midst of this against the township and the township assessor. This all arises from the 2002 contract that the city, the school district, and the park district made with Carl, under which Carl agreed to give money for certain public purposes. In exchange, those units of government agreed that they and their successors would not take certain actions concerning Carl's exemptions. At that time, the township and the township assessor were not involved in it. They knew nothing about it. I knew nothing about it. In fact, it appears to me there was a concerted effort to conceal this information of the negotiations on this contract from the township officers and the township attorney, though the township was made a party to it by the then mayor signing the contract in the name of the township. So whether the township is actually a party to the contract remains to be litigated. In the meantime, what Carl is seeking, among other things, is getting back the $775,000 that they paid under that contract and getting back the approximately $21 million in taxes they have paid in Champaign County for the 6 years involved in the lawsuit. The primary beneficiary of the contract and of the taxes was the Urbana School District. A school district officer, I've learned, was responsible for pursuing it, trying to get the money up to the amount that they got it up to, and most of the money went to them. Now that their actions have opened themselves up to a liability of potential liability of more than $21 million, they apparently have decided that it is time to blame somebody for it, and so they blame the township and the township assessor, who weren't involved in it from the beginning and have never been involved in it. I don't know to what extent the school board is aware of this. Normally, the governing body is the one that authorizes litigation. If I thought the town board ought to be suing somebody, I wouldn't just go out and do it. I might tell you I think you should do this, but it'd be your decision. You're the governing body. I find no public record that the school board ever discussed it, voted on it, or approved it, so I don't know what they know or why they did anything that they are doing. Highly questionable is their legal theory by which the township and the assessor are responsible for their potential liability. Attempts have been made through the normal formal process in the litigation to get explanations of what it is they're doing and why they're doing it, but they have been spending their time trying to dodge providing answers and documents. If there are any questions about any of that, I'd be happy to respond.
I see hands coming up all over here. We'll take them in order. We'll do Brandon, then Eric, then Dennis, then Diane. Brandon.
Yeah, and this may not be so much a question, but look, the schools and the city have for years had a great working relationship, so this comes as a complete surprise. I'm shocked that they would countersue us in this, and I hope that because we both represent the same population of taxpayers, that we could make whatever conversations and plans with the school district so that we don't end up spending a bunch of the same pool of taxpayers' money having these two units of government disagree in what in litigation where we should be united in a very complex case. So whatever other ways you can approach the school district, and certainly with this becoming more public, I think there will be a lot of questions asked, and we should as a city do our best to try to encourage the schools to come back to the table and sort this out so that we can not spend a bunch of time and a bunch of money on legal fees having the two units of government quibble in what otherwise is a case that we should all be working hard on.
Eric?
So I have two questions. My first question is, how do you really feel about this? But my second question is there any, is this, at this particular point, an informational item for us, or is there any action that we should take as a board or that is appropriate for us as concerned individuals and residents of the Urbana School District?
This is informational. We are taking that action in court that is appropriate. We are defending their claims at this point in time. I don't think there's anything formal for the town board to be doing right now, but I didn't know if the town board was aware of this aspect of it because the media had never picked up on it, and so there was never reported, even though it's public information, because it's all appears in the court records.
Where do you really think this is really trying to go?
Where it's trying to go?
Yes.
That's hard to say. I think it's irrational. I think they're trying to avoid public responsibility for their own actions, which is what got them into the situation they're in.
Okay.
Well, it seems like if there is no record of the process by which the school board takes responsibility for the actions of the school board representative that entered or signed the contract, and if we're talking about a school board that's over time changed due to elections. So we don't have the original people involved today that we had back in 2002, nor is the mayor the same person. How do we make any sense of the current action? Because we can't go back and sort out what the intent was, but it's being interpreted today as a need to reclaim money. Is that correct? Is that basically the whole point that this is like being demonstrated?
On the question of the intent, back in '02, there was no intent by the township and no intent by the township assessor because they weren't involved in it. So there was no intent to do anything, no intent to agree to anything or to reimburse them for anything. I don't know, did that answer all of your question?
It was more in the terms of the fact that the school board itself has changed. You know, it's an elected body, and those people are no longer in office, many of them. How do we, I mean, who can speak, you know, accurately for them if there's no public record?
Well, the school board, I would think, is responsible for the action that has been taken just this past March to file in this lawsuit. The school district officer who was involved in this at that time is still the school district officer involved in it at this time. I think, in fact, that's probably the only officer of any of these units of government who was involved in it at that time who is still an officer of that unit of government.
Sounds like the school board should reconsider its actions.
Couple of questions. When the mayor back in 2002 signed the contract on behalf of the township, was that at a town board meeting, or was that discussed at a town board? Was he acting as the chair of the town board in his capacity?
Yes, a special meeting was called, I believe, by the mayor to have this as an agenda item, and I wasn't here, Joanne wasn't there, Fred wasn't there.
Because we weren't told about it.
Yeah, we weren't involved in that meeting at all. It was arranged by the mayor as the town board chair.
But the council was there, acting as the
Yes.
town board.
Yes. And there's a record that the special meeting was held and who was present. So,
But as the town board, and did the mayor at that time have the authority to sign on your behalf?
I don't know.
That's what you're contesting.
That's-
Well, I suppose the town board could authorize the janitor to sign a contract. If they authorized the mayor to do it, they could do that. It would be unusual, because the mayor is not a town officer. The mayor's only function with respect to the township is that the mayor happens to be the person who chairs the town board meeting, doesn't get a vote, doesn't have any other involvement with the township.
Well, I guess my next question is, can this suit be taken farther and extend to the city as well as the township, since the
Could they?
city officers were involved as well?
I suppose they could. They haven't.
Yet, okay. And the other question is, your paragraph that says you had to terminate cooperation between the school district and the township in the main lawsuit. What are the implications of that?
Well, the attorneys for the 4 units of government, city, township, and so forth, would meet periodically and discuss our research, our strategy, things we're intending to file. Once the school board became our adversary, at least the adversary to me, I stopped participating in any meetings with them, so they no longer have the benefit of knowing what we're doing, of our participation, of our research. So they're on their own.
And you're the main source of information.
Well, that's my opinion, but I don't know if everybody would agree.
Brendan.
Yeah. Another sort of bigger picture question. I know that, well, tell me the $21 million that the hospital has paid in taxes that are being held pending the outcome of the whole suit overall. The school district hasn't spent those monies. I mean, the monies are all being held so that regardless of the outcome of the case, the public entities are able to pay back those dollars if it's decided that the hospital is owed those dollars, right? So, I mean, ultimately, it's not like any of these public entities would end up on the hook because we all have this money saved in kind of like an escrow account
As I
pending
sit
the
here,
outcome.
I don't know if that's accurate for all 4 units of government. It may well be, but I just can't tell you offhand.
Okay.
Yeah, we know the town board and the city are holding on to it, but
That's my understanding that we are, yes.
Yeah. And one last question. So if none of the township officials were involved in the 2002 agreement, including both of yourselves and the assessor, I mean, it seems like the assessor's office has always had sort of a firewall, so that public decision makers like us can't say to the assessor, well, go assess this person's house higher or lower, this neighborhood higher or lower. The assessor's job and function is highly regulated and controlled and sort of has a firewall of separation between us as decision makers. So it seems like the idea that in 2002 the city or the mayor acting as chair of the town board could sign an agreement asking another public official to do their job differently, that doesn't hold a lot of water with me. And I guess I just want to make sure in your capacity, you're representing at this point the township as well as the township assessor, and you sort of have both the assessor's office and the township as a whole entity covered in your legal efforts on this case, even though there is sort of a separation between one side of the township and the other.
And the contract, for what it's worth, does expressly exclude the assessment function, which is the only thing that the assessor did. But the present theory of Carl, and I don't want to get into a discussion now of Carl, but their present theory is that it is not the assessor, but the town board, the township, that is the real assessing authority, and that they have engaged the assessor as their agent to perform this function for them, which is not true.
I guess at this point, please keep us informed. And
Okay.
we'll see what we find out. And maybe having this see the light of day in the press will help flesh some things out. Dennis.
In your memo, it said that many of the parties would be ready to respond in 60 days, but that the
Carl wants to wait till
but
2013.
But the hospital wanted a year.
Well,
Year and a
the
half.
township and the assessor could be ready for trial in 60 days. The Carl Foundation said they needed another year and a half or so.
Was that the trial regarding the 21 million or this
All be together.
side contract? So it's all together?
All issues will be tried together, and Carl tried to get them separated into little pieces, but everybody objected, and the judge agreed that it would all be tried together.
I can't imagine the legal bills on the other side, and we wonder why our health care costs are so high. Is there anything else, Carol? Okay, I'll close this town board. Oh, Diane? Yes.
One more question about your attempts to get information from the school district. Can you FOIA that?
Yeah.
When you said they refused to give information?
There are things I could get that way, but it is quicker to deal with motions to enforce discovery and motions for sanctions in the pending litigation.
So,
Okay. Well, let's adjourn this meeting and get started with the next one. Heather, are you still with us? Did you have any questions?
No.
Okay. Okay, then the town board meeting is over, and as soon as the clerk's ready, we'll start city council meeting.